Bob Goodwin from Executives Without Borders is here with us at the BCLC Adding Value to Emerging Markets Conference. Bob, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Executives Without Borders, I mean, I've heard of Doctors Without Borders, Engineers Without Borders, but Executives Without Borders? Tell us about that.
Right. Well, one of the founders of Doctors Without Borders actually encouraged us to get started because if you look around the world, many doctors are working in Asia and Africa, and the need is so great that they go there to provide care, but suddenly they're running a clinic, running a hospital, and it's not doing what they do best. And so what we try to do is for those who are out there in a medical mission or education mission, finding ways to get people who know how to do administration, know how to run businesses, to help them on the administrative side so they can then do more of the healing people and educating side.
So you help run what they do.
That's true. So our model is to find essentially the best nonprofits that are out there and make them even better by adding additional resources and by connecting them with companies and professionals that can really help them solve some of these problems. So if you think about it, every place on earth there are cell phones. You go to the most remote tribal areas of Africa and there will be a guy with a cell phone. And, but that same person and his family are drinking water out of a pond that's filled with bacteria and parasites. And so if you look at that problem, say, how can we solve it? And my intention is to say, well, let's look at what the cell phone companies have done to create that market, to penetrate every aspect of society, to get information across to say, look, your water is unsafe. Here are some ways you can affect that. And here's a solution to help you have a better life for your family. So I think many times NGOs are doing all this incredible work out there, and right in front of them, there's this business community that if they really knew what was going on within those nonprofits, they would be able to leverage their expertise to help them fulfill their mission.
So what I'm hearing you say is that the right question that for me to ask is not, are you a business or are you an NGO? Instead, it's you are kind of like the mortar between the two. Is that right?
Or a bridge. I'd say one of our strengths is we look at a whole ecosystem or a whole community and say, what does everyone do best? And so, for example, in Haiti, we found Haitian business people that were processing plastic and selling it on the world market and making a profit. We found U.S. companies that could help us take a distribution model for that recyclable plastic out to all the different communities, and they helped build a storefront, which is what they do really good at, is modifying ocean containers. And then we found all these NGOs that had relationships with the locals in communities, knew who good entrepreneurs were that we could then identify and strengthen and get them set up. And then also, too, could integrate mentoring and other types of livelihood programs into those programs to strengthen their outcomes. So really, we're about connecting nonprofits with businesses, but at the same time finding within those nonprofits what do they do best, within those companies what do they do best, within governments, foundations, whatever, just saying how can we pull all these pieces together to make something good happen.
Wow. So at Rainmakers, we cover NGOs primarily who are doing fantastic work around the world, exactly some of the ones who you're talking about, I'm certain. But the problems always seem to start with the girl child. Right. And women and girls. With Executives Without Borders, do you have interaction with NGOs who work with women and girls?
We do. Actually, one of our partners is in India, and it's an organization called Nani Kali, which does educate young girls. And they eliminate any of the barriers that those young girls have in order to going to school. And so uniforms, school books, everything else like that, but then they also help provide education for those girls who've been out of the system for a long time to help them get back in and integrate. And what's been interesting with them is that now some of those girls are scoring higher than any of the other students, and it's sending kind of shockwaves through the Indian system. But they started out educating about 1,500 young girls. Now they're educating over 70,000. And as you can imagine, the infrastructure needed to educate that many more girls, as well as to have a donor base that can support that level of growth is challenging. So that's where the business community, and we brought in some professionals to help them with their growth. We've also been helping establish chapters around the world so they can help spread the message to what is happening in India and the importance of this program so that there's more awareness as well as more operational efficiency.
I want to pick up on something you said. You said it was a bit of a shock to the system. And when I hear that, I'm hearing, well, maybe there's some cultural change that's happening. Is that occurring, cultural change?
Well, the good thing was when you educate women, they educate a whole family. I mean, and so I think that one, everyone has seen kind of this importance of getting girls educated. But when those girls are getting better scores than the boys, who have had access to education for their entire lives, it is something that is just really, I don't know if it's cultural change, but it's something that people are really paying attention to.
Now, people don't do things, companies don't do things unless there's some return to them. The companies who you work with, do they get something back?
Sure. So there's several things that they can do. One thing is that many of the places we're working are strategic markets. Brazil, India are two of those. And so when those companies can go in and find really good nonprofits and increase their outcomes, that is something that the communities will pay attention to and say, wow, this is a company that really cares. And that creates conditions for them to have connections as well as other activities to help grow their for-profit side of their business. At the same time, most of the employees of these companies are looking for opportunities to give back, especially the millennial generation. And so if we can add not just activities to where companies can give money or stuff, but if we can get their employees engaged and those employees can be part of that goodness, it helps companies' employee retention, employee engagement, and actually, as you've seen with some of the IBM model, it really helps create a whole different culture within those companies. That's a powerful force moving forward.
In 2011, the UN held a high-level meeting on non-communicable diseases, the first essentially global health high-level meeting that they had since they had one about 10 years ago on HIV and AIDS. Does Executives Without Borders work in the global health field in any way?
We do. One of our biggest partners is in Honduras, and it's an organization providing health care to about 140,000 people that otherwise wouldn't have access to care. And so similar to what we've done with our other nonprofit partners, we went in there and said, you know, how can we help you operationally, but also help tell your story? And one of the amazing things about them is they have a model unlike any I've ever seen, one of the most powerful, impactful models. So we want to take what they've learned and actually apply it to other countries. And so we do find nonprofits that are working in the health sector, that are working in the safe water sector, and so much of the work that we're doing is in that arena.
So we've talked about a lot of successes. Mr. Goodwin, talk with us about some of the successes yet to be. Let's put it that way.
Well, part of the work of Executives Without Borders, we want to have projects. So we have specific NGOs that we've been working with where we've been adding business talent and expertise and driven better outcomes. But what we do with that is we then take that and say to the broader community, how do we advocate for more companies to understand that there are ways to integrate this work into their core business model? You know, many of the challenges with corporate social responsibility is it's outside that core business model. But if you can integrate into the core business development strategy or the core human capital strategies of these companies, it is then sustainable long term.
Is that working?
It's early. So I think some of the best companies are figuring that out and are working that. I'd say Dow Chemical, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, that understand that sometimes you need to do these pre-market investments in order to create conditions for your company to succeed, I think are seeing the benefits.
We're here at the Adding Value to Emerging Markets excuse me, conference, and the BCLC is announcing a map, a Business for Good map, as well as an International Business Core. Does that help you?
Absolutely, and we're one of the founding members of the IBC. And I think it provides where we have said, all right, we want what we've learned as far as getting skills-based volunteerism and companies engaged around the world. What the IBC provides is that platform for more companies and cross-company initiatives to happen so that it's not each individual company maybe having their own learning. It's a way to have that learning happen across the board and for companies to join forces. And you know, when you get one business person involved with a nonprofit, they can make a lot of impact. When you have a company that's involved in that same nonprofit, you can have an even greater impact. But when you can get a collection of companies working on all aspects of that not-for-profit's challenges, that's when you can have transformational change.
All right, let's go from the if and let's go to the when. You're 10 years down the road, you're looking back, how'd you do?
10 years down the road, I would say that what we have learned in our journey with Executives Without Borders becomes a standard practice of companies, and creates every company has a platform and a framework for them to leverage one of their most important resources, which is their people and their talent and the expertise that those people bring, so that they can be impacting nonprofits overseas and here at home. You know, one of the important things with the budget cuts and with the challenges that are happening in the United States is that local and state governments are suffering, the NGOs in our country are suffering, and recently Walmart, there was a big article about them, is that there was a local food bank that went to them for help. And Walmart said, well, we don't have any money to give. And they said, well, look, we want your expertise, because at the end of the day, Walmart is a logistics company. Mm-hmm. Walmart went in and for the same budget doubled the amount of recipients from 100,000 to 200,000 for that food bank and the people that they were serving. And I think that, to me, is something that I see is when companies can kind of say, look at a nonprofit and say, I want to look at this as a business unit. I want to look at this as, how do I leverage all of my core areas, marketing, finance, logistics, in order to help that nonprofit work on the system of the problem, and not just, you know, one little intervention. That's when I think we're going to have transformational change here, and that's what I think the role that the business community can have here at home as well as overseas.
Sounds like you've just described sustainability.
I think that would be a great path to sustainability, and I think that's what it comes down to, is when people see it's in their core interest. And I think that society is demanding more of companies these days, and most companies have not gotten to the point. They've done cleaning up parks, you know, they've done, you know, they go and they do projects with to build houses, and we don't want those things to stop. But in addition to that, you've got some of the most amazing brightest people in the world, and just saying, like, look, these people solve global business challenges on a daily basis. The problems that exist within the nonprofit community are the same, but business people are not focused on how we also solve those. And I think the BCLC has been a great force in moving that journey forward, as has Executives Without Borders, and I'm so happy we joined forces with Dow Chemical and the other IBC partners to really get this ingrained in our culture and our society.
We'll let that be the last